the last maybe 150 of them or so. Joining us here on the desk this afternoon, two partisans in this campaign, Kathy Dunderdale, co-chair of Lynn Varge's campaign, and Charlie Power, who's been involved with Loyola Sullivan. Both of you now, the politicking is over, the voting is nearly done. Give us a sense of how it feels at the final moments before the votes are released. Charlie Power?
Well, Doug, I think this is just so close to call. One of the great parts from the PC party point of view is there's such tremendous enthusiasm here. I mean, a lot of people who really think that there's good ideas and the right people, whether it's Varge or Sullivan who runs the camp, they really make a great difference in the next provincial election. I think Sullivan is going to win, but it's going to be by a very small majority.
Kathy?
Absolutely exhilarating. It's the fruition of 3 months of hard work. We've had 15,000 people participate in this process across the province, and Varge is going to win it. It's going to be close, but she's going to win it.
It's going to be close, but she's going to win it. There was a lot of talk yesterday about the soft delegate support on both sides, and many people thought that this convention might well turn on how that soft delegate support went over last night and into today. First of all, from either of you, was there much of it, and did you sense it going to either camp? Kathy?
There was a lot more of it than we expected coming into the convention, and we found a lot of it yesterday and last night. It moved today with Lynn Varge's speech. Anybody that wasn't over on the yellow side of the hall was there by the end of that magnificent speech she made today.
Wow. Did you see it that way, Charlie?
Well, not at all. First of all, I don't think there was very much soft support. That slate process where you elect people by slates and you go in, or a Varge or a Sullivan person got elected, they ran on a slate, and once you do that and you come here and you wave those little pom-poms and flags and you get up and rant and rave, not a whole lot of soft support, I don't think. If there was any, I don't think Lynn's speech was great. I think the introduction to her speech was absolutely superb, professional, showed really well. I don't think she played on her strength of really being able to beat Clyde Wells, really wanting to take him on head-to-head sort of. And I just think if there was any soft support, I think Sullivan might pick up some of it, Kathy, not Lynn, unfortunately, for you.
Oh, I'm afraid I don't agree. You obviously haven't been listening to the dialogue that's going on, the conversations, the discussions that are so full of enthusiasm and support for Lynn that are taking place all over this hotel.
I will agree with you. Lynn's support, our government, has been radical in her enthusiasm. Lynn has been in politics a long while. A lot of people thought, myself included, that she should have ran for leadership in '89 and in '92, I guess, with her '91 when Lynn won it. I'm not sure the same degree of enthusiasm was there with Sullivan's camp, because a lot of people really don't know him as well as Lynn's people have been with her for many years. But I just think that Sullivan's people did a better job out in organising the slates and getting the district executives elected, and that's where it's going to be. It's people you brought here are going to vote for you very much, and not a lot of soft support, Doug. I don't see it.
Two numbers that people at home should be noting down this afternoon as we continue our coverage. 725 people were registered to vote, and that means that the magic number is 363. So when you hear them announce the vote this afternoon, if somebody has 363 or more, that's the first candidate, you know that they're the new leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. We have two reporters on the floor for our coverage this afternoon, Carmel Smith from CBC News and Debbie Cooper from Here and Now. Let's go with Debbie right now.
Thanks very much, Doug. And somebody who's been watching those numbers very closely, John Lassinger. He is the campaign organizer for Lynn Varge. So, Mr. Lassinger, what do you think? Does Lynn Varge have the numbers here today to get to 363, the magic one?
Well, it's in the hands of the delegates right now, but we had a lead coming into the convention. I thought both the speeches were excellent. I thought they both gave good, solid speeches. They spoke to their strengths, but I think Lynn really got some momentum by speaking near the last and speaking second. We had a good demonstration, and I just feel that we picked up the momentum, and I know there's been a fair number of conversions of people who are wearing both buttons now are wearing a Varge button. And there are a number of people who want to be with the winner, and if they sense there's momentum and they think that might be where the winner is, they'll go there. Not a huge number, but just enough to.
Well, with just between two delegates like this, I mean, every number does count, and I guess any of the soft vote that you can pick up, I mean, it's just a bonus.
Well, everyone, it's like playing baseball. Everyone's a two-pointer. If you lose one, it goes to the other side. So it's a two-point spread.
Why do you think the race has become this close, though? Ms. Verge was seen to be the front runner, the one who had this one to lose. In other words, she looked like a shoe-in at the beginning. Why so close now?
Well, I think if you look at the history of leadership conventions in Canada for the last 25, 30 years, they're all very close. A 60-40, 60%, 40% margin is a landslide. And so, you know, Ryder, when he won in 1989, won by 26 votes, which was 13 people, and he was the odds-on favorite. But Sims made it very close, and that's what party events are for. I mean, I've been struck in this race. In two people, you have so many differences. You have a man versus a woman. You have a Catholic versus a Protestant. You have a veteran versus a newcomer. You have I'd say a conservative versus more of a progressive conservative. You've got urban versus rural. There's a great spread of factors, and you have East Coast, West Coast. I mean, so you have a whole lot of things that make it easy for people to pick up sides.
Mr. Lassinger, Doug Letto here. I want to pick up on a few of those contrasts that you mentioned. You mentioned Catholic versus Protestant. Do you think that was much of an issue in this campaign? There certainly was some talk about it in terms of rumors that the Sullivan side was playing to that element. Do you think that they were?
No, I don't think so. I think that people, you know, tend to use their own networks of support for friendships, and, you know, I think Mr. Sullivan was also using the Kinsman network because he's a member of the Kinsman, and Lynn Varge was using members of cultural groups because she has those networks. So those are normal kinds of things.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Lassinger, and now we're going to go over to Carmel Smith.
Thanks, Debbie. There's a lot of noise here on the floor. People are still lining up to vote, but it's going much quicker than most delegates thought that it would. So it would seem that if people were waiting to hear the speeches to make up their minds, they've made up their minds. Loyola Sullivan's side lost the towing cause, so they had to make the first speech. Mr. Sullivan delivered a strong, rousing speech. He's very comfortable, relaxed, a much stronger speaker than Lynn Varge, who still appears a little nervous after all her years in politics. But when the Verge team came on with a video, a flashy video to the song "Nothing Can Stop Us Now," there were smiles and cheers, and it seemed that the crowd turned. It was something that made some of the delegates from the Sullivan side a little nervous, and one of them, Jocelyn Costello, a longtime PC from Mount Pearl, joins us now. Jocelyn, what was your reaction to the speeches?
I was impressed with both Lynn and Loyola. I think the video probably helped Lynn a lot in being effective in delivering her message. It stayed right from start to finish. Even her speech included that, defeating Clyde Wells, and that's what the people wanted to hear. But it's not going to be enough to be able to pull off a victory here today. I still think Sullivan is going to do it. Not by a big margin, but he will do it.
And the first time that you were a little nervous was today, was it, after you listened to the speeches?
Yes, yeah. But there is a bit of undecided support out there, so that might have influenced their decision.
Mr. Sullivan was criticized a little bit. Some of the delegates here were worried about a Southern Shore accent.
Oh, I thought that was very distasteful on Debbie Cooper's part last night. I'm from the Southern Shore. I've got a very strong brogue, and I'm very damn proud of it. And to judge an individual on their brogue, I think it's very distasteful.
So you don't think it's going to make any difference?
Not in the least. It might help them, if anything.
Great. Thanks, Jocelyn. Back to you, Doug.
Thank you, Carmel. I want to pick up on a point that Mr. Lassinger mentioned a few minutes ago, or somebody mentioned in the discussion with Mr. Lassinger. This was about the question of momentum and what helps turn momentum your way. Ms. Verge had a kind of a light and picture and sound show leading into hers. Very brief, very characteristic of Lassinger. Charlie Power, you've seen so many of these conventions. Does that help motivate people at the end? Does it turn undecided over to decided?
I don't really think so, but it certainly was successful. Lassinger has done a lot of very successful leadership campaigns all across the country, so he knows what to do to get people aroused and excited at the convention. One of the problems with this convention from Lassinger's organizational point of view is that there's only two candidates. There's only going to be one vote. If there was 2 votes or 3 votes, and you knew, then momentum becomes very important. Who picked up, who dropped off, who changed badges or sweaters. In this race, which is going to be so decisive, 1 vote, it's over. I'm not sure John's momentum theory really makes much difference. No question that his organizational skills, if there's something that would throw 10 or 20 votes, which might be all you might need to win this convention, then a guy like Lassinger is definitely worth 10 or 20 votes in a lot of places because he just does things so professionally.
Kathy, did it help here today with this show and this music? And
Oh, certainly. You can feel the energy building throughout the room. And I personally talked to a number of people over the weekend who hadn't really decided which way they were going to go, and they were going to listen to the speeches and see what happened on the floor here today. And the whole presentation was so powerful that I think it was an influence.
let's deal with something else quickly and kind of get it over with. This question that religion somehow played a part in this. Did you both hear the rumors that people were suggesting that Mr. Sullivan's campaign, at least, was trying to attract the Catholic vote and fill halls that way? Or is this a rumor on the part of a few people and does it snowball? Kathy, you were on the other side.
Absolutely a rumor. I found myself amused many times because if you were to listen to all the rumors and...
So there was nothing to it?
And what types of people belonged where. I'm a Catholic, I'm a feminist, I have an accent. You'd be running back and forth to which camp do you belong. People aren't pigeonholed that easily. We're looking for people we're looking for a strong leader, somebody who's going to lead this party in the government, and that's what people are interested in both our camps.
Well, I think what happens, Doug, is not so much old-fashioned religion, you know, the Protestants against the Catholic kind of element, but I think there is an element in the Conservative Party of left-wing, right-wing, and some of it equates to abortion, some of the gay rights, a whole bunch of issues that people talk about. Lynn is very progressive and has been very successful in opening up a lot of minds in Newfoundland about some of those issues. But there still is a fundamental traditional element, and I saw it down in St. John's East Extern, where there were some persons there who were very unhappy with Mrs. Varge's pro-abortion style of things, the feminist approach. Now, personally, that doesn't bother me at all, what Mrs. Varge does or says and how the party unfolds that way. But there is an element of it there, Doug, and some of the older Conservative votes will probably not vote for Mrs. Varge because of that, and that's maybe unfortunate, but it certainly is there in a small amount.
In all fairness, too, though, we've had a lot of talk in this campaign about young people, new faces that we have to bring into the party. And those very same people on the other end of the spectrum are appalled when we see a camp, you know, when we have a leadership team up there and we've got one young woman of 18 years old in the grouping and not another woman to be seen. So all of these things factor in, but I think the bottom line for most people is who can provide good leadership and good government.
Okay, we'll continue to talk about the issues that are raised as we go on. I've noticed that the line of voters is now stretched way past us, and it won't be much longer before they'll be closing off voting. Debbie Cooper is now standing by with a couple of delegates who have some things to say.
Thanks very much, Doug. Well, I am standing with two delegates, first-time delegates to a convention, and just until the speeches, well, right after the speeches, it took them that long to make up their minds as to who they were going to vote for. Let me introduce
Jerry Ryan from Carbonear.
and Winnie Forward from Carbonear. Okay, and you've both decided that you're going for Lynn Varge. First of all, to you, Jerry, what made up your mind?
Well, two candidates had very strong speeches, and they had, you know, throughout the campaign, they've both been very strong on different points. They covered most of the main points in their speeches, but when it came down to the bottom line, you wanted to make an educated decision on who you were going to vote for. You wanted to look at who had, you know, the best chance of going into the next election and actually beating the Liberal Party. And both speeches were good, but Lynn came across a bit more charismatic. She was a lot more energetic. She was a little bit more people-oriented, I think, in her approach to her campaign and what she sees for the party doing in the future. I think she has a pretty good chance to win the next election. She has a proven track record, and I can't see what can go wrong.
So, Winnie, when you were watching Ms. Varge and Mr. Sullivan and you were sizing them up, what was it that put you over for Ms. Varge with what she had to say today?
Well, I was very impressed with Mr. Sullivan's ambition, and he has very much charismatic feeling to him as well. But I think when it really came down to it, I sort of took a democratic view of things in that it should be by the people, of the people, and for the people. And she emphasizes that throughout all her campaigning, and I didn't see as much of it in his campaigning. And I thought, well, if you're going to put somebody in there that's going to listen to you, then it has to be Lynn, because she really does weigh the pros and cons before she takes a stance on any issue, and I like that.
Okay, well, thank you to you both for joining me. And now, Doug, it's back to you.
Well, we've been talking about the candidates, what they stand for, what they've been saying, and we're going to show you condensed versions of both speeches, about 10.5 minutes each, approximately. Loyola Sullivan was the first speaker up today. And here is the version of his speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. My name is Danny Williams, and I am very proud today to stand before such a vibrant and enthusiastic group of fellow progressive conservatives to nominate the next leader of the PC party of Newfoundland and Labrador, Loyola Sullivan!
Good afternoon, fellow progressive conservatives. And fellow Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Today, we gather in a can-do optimistic spirit and with a shared vision. Our objective is to get our party to where we have not been in the past 6 years on the government side of the legislature. This convention is about leadership and about building on our party's strengths and about meeting the challenges of today as we prepare for the successes of tomorrow. We must build positive and high-performance teams in all 52 districts, and our caucus will hold the Liberals fully accountable in the House of Assembly. Our challenge is to renew our party and reinvigorate our membership. We must give all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians a breath of hope when the candles of hope and trust have all but been extinguished in our province. We must and we will provide better government. Ladies and gentlemen, your new leader must be surrounded by a qualified and dedicated team. A team ready, willing, and anxious to enroll others in our party's vision for the future. We will need a new and dynamic political organization with fresh ideas and new faces if we are to defeat the Liberals in the next general election. That's why I have offered myself as a candidate. That's why I feel I am best positioned to lead this party to victory in the next general election. Good leadership is about communication and accessibility. A good leader embraces new ideas, creates a shared vision, believes in a people-centered philosophy, and is able to combine the necessities of good management and efficiency with a sense of compassion. My pledge to you is that I will be the most accessible leader and premier in the history of this province. A new kind of old-fashioned leadership. The leader of our party and the premier of our province needs the human touch to be effective. We must get back to the basics. A sense of community, a belief in the value of people. and ability to listen to others. We must build on a Newfoundland tradition of people working together to solve their problems. Political leaders must be committed to hard work, absolute honesty and competency. I believe in common sense approaches to decision making, and I believe leadership is about inspiration as well as perspiration. It's about focusing on issues and keeping hope alive in people's hearts and minds. It is not enough for the new leader to know the right thing. The successful leader must be able to do the right thing. We need leadership that takes its head off to the past, but its jacket off to the future. I look upon no task is too demanding, no decision is too trivial, and no effort as being in vain. I know there are going to be great changes in our province. We must not permit ourselves to slowly become a product of change, but rather we must become the initiators of change. We must be proactive, strong-willed, caring, and sensitive. Our province has seen too much of the defeatist attitude and negativity in the past 6 years. We must examine new pathways as we prepare our party to meet the challenges of the new economy and the new realities of the world marketplace. In the Liberal Policy Manifesto of 1989, Clyde Wells said, a Liberal government would recognize the Department of Fisheries as the key industrial division of government. 6 years later, we have no Department of Fisheries. A Sullivan-led government will restore the Department of Fisheries to its rightful place around the cabinet table. In 1989, Clyde Wells promised to bring home every mother's son. But since then, we have seen 20,000 jobs disappear from our province, and we have seen families devastated by relocation, by separation, and unemployment. We must and we will do more to stop the weekly and daily outmigration of our most important resource, our people. Getting rid of closed doors and behind-the-scenes decision-making will be one of the easiest things for me to implement, both as leader and as Premier of this province. It is something I have been doing all my life, and it is part of my daily work ethic. When I become the new leader, each person here today can expect a personal request for assistance to help our party get on with the challenges that lie ahead. There are many reasons why I want to be leader of our party and the Premier of our province, but the most important one is my concern for the future of Newfoundland and Labrador. I want the opportunity to play a role in setting out a course of action that will put our province on the road to recovery. I want a province that reflects our pride of heritage and remains a proud place to live, to work, and to raise our families. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the enthusiasm, the energy, and the commitment to be leader of our party. I have the enthusiasm, energy, and commitment not only to be leader of our party, but to be the next premier of our province. I asked you to vote for me and share in my vision and become part of a winning team that will lead the PC party to a decisive victory in the next general election. Thank you very much.
There you have it, a condensed version of Loyola Sullivan's speech to the convention here at the Hotel Newfoundland this afternoon. That was done about 3 hours ago. That's when the speeches began. I found interesting in that speech, very general, intended Charlie Power to show that he's up to the job, that you can trust me and that stuff, but very general, very full of cliches almost. Did you see it at all that way?
Yes, one of the unfortunate parts of the process of leadership conventions like this is that you really don't get much of a chance to get into policy. And I think one of the unfortunate things is that we didn't get a chance to focus on PC policies or our differences. Now, hopefully we'll do that with our policy convention in the fall. But obviously the speech itself is meant to show, yeah, I can do the job, I've got a good background, I've been successful at everything I did, and there's no reason why I can't do this now. And when I look at it, and I look back and see some of the other speeches that we've seen over the years, when Peckford made his speech, and I went 79 against a senior guy like Bill Doody, all the Doody's camp were saying, listen, if that guy ever gets leader of the PC party, we're finished. But I mean, style and substance and all that Brian had was a new way of doing things. And I think Sullivan tries to do that, to say there has to be another way to do politics in Newfoundland, besides what we've seen for the last 6 years. And I think he's capable of doing that, and I guess that's what cliches are for, Doug, to try and say, yeah, you can't go through all the details, here I am.
Kathy, when you heard that speech, what did you think, you being a Verge supporter?
I thought it was a good speech. It was a strong speech, and he spoke to his strengths. He also took what I thought were some of his weaknesses, in that his newness to elected politics and the fact that he's never been a member of the government, and turned that around and made it appear to be a strength. But I thought it was a very good speech.
He said at one point that in 30 days after I become Premier, we'll have a deal on education reform with the people who are involved in education reform. We heard Clyde Wells, I think, say within 30 days of becoming the Premier, I'll have an Economic Recovery Commission. Bill Clinton, within 100 days, he'll have an action plan. Are the voters really demanding of politicians these days that you tell us how soon you're going to deliver on the barrelhead?
I think one of the things that the Tory party has to do is to show the people of Newfoundland that there's a reason for to have the Tories as the government. And it's not just to have Tories in there. There must be a purpose to it, and you must have something different to say and do. Putting yourself on a timetable saying 30 days to negotiate with the churches, the only way you get an agreement with the churches in 30 days is if you give them everything they want. I mean, so those kind of things are there, and they're meant. I think what he was trying to say basically that, listen, there must be a way for us to negotiate without laying down ultimatums to churches or any other group, which has been happening. So, but I think he'll have a hard time making 30 days be a guideline within the government to get things done.
They just announced behind us that in 5 minutes the balloting will be over here, so that's a fair warning to people who haven't balloted or voted in the hall yet. I expect it'll take about an hour to count, what, 725 ballots that have been cast here this afternoon, and Kathy Dunderdale, you pointed out that that's about 60 short of a full attendance, which really is quite an interesting accomplishment. People, I believe, thought when this started that there wouldn't be near that many delegates here today. As we told you, we have reporters on the floor. Carmel Smith now is standing by with a former Conservative MHA for the district of St. John's East Extern, Kevin Aylward. He supports Loyola Sullivan. Kevin Parsons, apology.
Oh, thanks, Doug. Yes, I'm here on the floor with Kevin Parsons, who came to the convention a staunch Sullivan supporter, so staunch, in fact, he stood on the stage behind him while Sullivan made his speech. Mr. Parsons, what did you think of Mr. Sullivan's speech?
It was an excellent speech. He addressed all the contentious issues that I thought should be addressed. And I was real proud to be part of the Sullivan team.
Did you think that Mr. Sullivan's speech was strong enough to sway the undecided vote?
I think, yes, it was. I think that anyone out there with Newfoundland and Labrador at heart, I think they should have been swayed, and I think they were swayed.
Your prediction for the outcome?
It's going to be close. I mean, I'd be less than truthful. I didn't say that. I think it's going to be close. I'm looking at, and I'm being conservative, perhaps, but within the range of 50. Somewhere within a 50 range. And hopefully, and I think we will, I think that Sullivan will have those extra 50.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Over now to you, Debbie.
Thanks very much, Carmel, and I'm here now with former Conservative Cabinet Minister Jim Morgan. And Mr. Morgan, yesterday you were on a panel discussion with me and some other guests, and you were saying, I am not decided, I'm not going to make up my mind until I listen to the two candidates today deliver their speeches. You're wearing a Lynn Varge pin right now. What did it for you?
Well, I listened to both speeches very attentively, and I convinced that Lynn Varge's speech was indeed the kind of speech that would change people like myself who was, or swing them, who was undecided. She made a very good speech. It was a good political speech, but she had substance to her speech as well. And it was Lynn Varge who was giving the speech. It was Lynn Varge's own speech, whereas I looked at the other chap, Loyola Sullivan. He made a good speech. He was very aggressive. He's a good politician. But I think that, in my own view, that people wrote that speech for him. It wasn't Loyola Sullivan. The other thing that sort of turned me off was the massive numbers of members of the House of Assembly. Not massive, the ones that are supporting him now, and many of the former members of the House. He's been campaigning on a new image for the party, a new beginning, and et cetera, et cetera. And, but he brought all these fellows on stage from the past who were supporting him. And I don't think the delegates went along with that. They don't want ex-politicians like myself or anybody else telling them who they should vote for.
Now, one of those ex-politicians is Kevin Parsons, who was just speaking with Carmel Smith, and he was saying, when asked how close is it, he said pretty close, and you were thinking you read something into that.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that, because yesterday when I was here, before I went on your panel, I was talking to many of my former colleagues in the House of Assembly, and those who were supporting Sullivan, and many of them, in fact, talked to these people, and they were all saying, oh, well, we got the good majority, we're not worried, we did our numbers, and we're ahead. Now today they're saying it's close. I think he's somewhat right. It's going to be very close, because I don't see any changes today on the floor here from those people who came in from the various districts, elected on various slates for the individual candidates. But I do see some swing from the people who came here, like myself, from the ex-officio members, and who didn't really have their minds made up until today. I saw some swing. I know at least 4 or 5 of them who swung or made up their mind and went with Lynn Varge, who, as of yesterday, did not have their minds made up. So based on that, I can see a victory for Lynn Varge. I hate to make projections, but
yes, let's have some numbers here.
I would venture to say she'll win it by somewhere from 25 to 35 votes. So that's a pretty close election when you look at the fact there's about 700 and something people voting here.
Okay, then. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Morgan. And I'll have that final count within the next maybe 45, 60 minutes from now. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
And over to you, Doug.
Thank you, Debbie. Let's talk for a minute about the Charlie Power. I think they call it in leadership campaigns and election campaigns, the optics. You were one of the members standing up there on the stage behind Mr. Sullivan as he delivered his speech. Did it strike you at all that this would turn people off?
I'm not sure at all. I mean, with all due deference to Jim, who was just there, I know Jim, and I talked to him about a month ago, and he was leaning very strongly towards Mrs. Varge's camp then. So I think Jim was looking for an excuse to vote for Lynn and to try to rationalize how he changed from yesterday. But I don't see a lot of that stuff playing major roles. I suppose there is always the optics of it, as you say. Someone doesn't like the fact that there's 17 or 18 ex-MHAs or present MHAs there, but for the most part, Doug, I think it's what the candidates say and how they say it. Mrs. Varge's speech, Loyola's speech, and what they stand for. And I don't really think that very many people will decide the leadership of the party based upon whether a PC whether I was on the stage or whether I wasn't on the stage, because I'm really not part of the whole thing.
Well, does it create an impression somehow, Kathy, that somehow that the party establishment is behind my candidate, but they're not yours? Does it do that to people?
To some degree, it does. I think optics do play a role. A number of people have commented, for example, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that of all his supporters up there, we had his seconder for the nomination, a young woman, but there weren't any other women on the stage with Loyola. That makes an impact. That people register those kinds of things that they see before them. So to some degree, optics. And again, when you're talking about doing things a new way, having a new face, and then there are all faces that we've seen before stood behind them, that it weakens, I think, the argument.
Does it weaken the argument?
Well, I mean, one of the dangers of doing anything, one thing about John Lassenger running Lynn's campaign, is that he doesn't let his candidates make mistakes. If John Lassenger's candidates lose, it's because they were going to lose, not because they had it and gave it away. And so obviously, whenever you do anything, there's a risk involved, and hopefully there's a positive side as well. Having the MHAs up there, obviously, I think was a positive. It shows that Loyola Sullivan, even though being new, is very well accepted by the older guard of the party and some of the newer members of the legislature. So he's done something right to have those people there. On the other hand, I suppose someone will look and say, hey, some of those guys really shouldn't be there. And Kathy looks at this, there's no women there. Well, that's the problem, is that there haven't been very many women in the legislature. So if you're going to have politicians, the present legislature included, there's simply not very many women involved. And if our party is going to be successful, Kathy is right. That's one thing we really must change.
When I was introducing Kevin Parsons, I referred to him as Kevin Aylward, who of course is the environment minister in the Liberal government, and I'm not sure what he was taking the most offense at, that he was a former...
Kevin would probably be flattered that he's finally joined the right party.
A former minister or a conservative, which leads me into the next point. There's Lynn Varge and Loyola Sullivan at this moment. When people see which of them will lead the party, they kind of automatically picture them up against Clyde Wells. And nobody is absolutely sure that Clyde Wells will be there. Does that change the water on the beans somewhat if the Liberals change leaders over the next 6 months or so?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think I'd want to be Lynn or Loyola. If Brian Tobin came back to run the Liberals in the next 6 weeks or 6 months or so, you might find yourself in a very difficult battle. So, sure, I mean, faces change. People get sick of the guys that are there. They change when someone new comes along. If you only change just to avoid what is going to be an electoral catastrophe, such as changing Brian Mulroney to Kim Campbell, that is not going to solve your problem, Liberals or Conservatives at any level. If you change for legitimate reasons and the Premier decides he wants to retire and someone new and full of more energy or vigor takes over, then the whole optics of the convention or the election will certainly change, Doug, but I don't think it makes a lot of difference to Lynn or Loyola today. They've got to go out and do the best they can with the people they have and just take your chances with the other guy. You can't be worrying what the other crowd are doing. Do your own thing.
I absolutely agree. It could change at any time, but the focus for our party has to be an alternative to the government we have at the moment, and a plan and a vision for the future, and I think we have that.
Well, they are, you were talking about Clyde Wells and whether he'd be around, and Brian Tobin, if he'll come back. That's a discussion probably for another time. Before we go any further, we've been referring and alluding to Lynn Varge and her performance as potential leader for the party. Lynn Varge spoke to the convention here about 2 hours and 15 minutes ago. We had told you earlier that we're presenting condensed versions of the speeches, and we told you as well that Lynn Varge's was preceded by a John Lassenger characteristic, a kind of floor and light show. Let's go now to a version of her speech.
My name is Calvin Powell, and I'm president of the Border-Grade PC Association. The road to change is here, is now, and includes every progressive conservative in this province. Our party is poised to take back the responsibilities of government. Our task this weekend is to select a leader who is best able to lead us to victory in the next election and form a government that is credible and responsive to the needs of its people. Lynn Varge has the intelligence, experience, toughness, and sensitivity to provide that necessary direction.
because we are convinced that our time has come. People watching, including liberals, know this is true. I say liberals because for the past year, Clyde Wells has been talking about getting out. He knows the jig is up. So now he's angling for a safe, secure appointment from his liberal friends at Ottawa before he gets a rude awakening from the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. There are some in our party who want Mr. Wells to leave now before he does any more damage to our province, and I can certainly understand. But I have a confession to make. I want Mr. Wells to stay right where he is until the next election. I want to pick up where I left off with Clyde in Humber East in 1989. I'm sometimes asked what our party stands for. What distinguishes our party from the others? Well, I'm proud to say that being a PC in Newfoundland and Labrador means striving to control our destiny, fighting to control our resources. Being a PC means cherishing the rural character of our province. Most Newfoundlanders and Labradorians live in small communities, and that's one of our strengths. And being a PC means having fair standards for government hiring and contracting. It was a PC government that set up the Public Service Commission, and it was a PC government that passed the Public Tendering Act. The Public Tendering Act, that's the law the Supreme Court just ruled the Wells government broke in the Trans-City Hospital scandal. The economy is undoubtedly our most pressing problem. Unemployment is far too high, and too many of the brightest and best of our young people are being forced out of the province to find employment. Since the Economic Recovery Commission was established, not only has the economy not recovered, it's become steadily worse. The Wells government has failed miserably at economic development. They've abandoned their responsibilities for the fishery, which is our most important industry, and they haven't even tried to get the benefits that should have been ours from Hibernia. The Wells government allowed jobs to be towed out of Marystown. That never would have happened under a PC government. We can do better, and we will do better. Higher levels of education and training have the power to attract new investment to the province. We must get on with reforms to education, reforms based not on power struggles, but based on excellence in curriculum and teaching, reforms based on accountability. Reforms based not on power struggles, but on accountability to parents and taxpayers. And most importantly of all, reforms based on providing greater opportunities to students. We've got to put our students first. Higher education is vital in achieving our economic potential. In the face of declining federal transfers and rising tuition fees, we've got to find ways to ensure that no one is denied the opportunity to higher education because of family income. We must insist upon health care that's responsive to the needs of patients, not dictated by remote, uncaring accountants. I now want to address what lies ahead for our party. First, we've got to keep up the momentum which has been generated as a result of this leadership process and the waves of enthusiasm that are in this convention hall. I'll put before the party an election readiness plan that will see us starting tomorrow to prepare to win the next election. It's essential that we have early nominations in districts currently held by other parties. This will allow these men and women the opportunity to become well known throughout their districts. During this leadership process, my campaign has reached out and attracted a lot of new people to our party, and we've got to continue to expand our base of support to inject vigor, although I don't know how much more vigor we could take. And to provide new ideas. I will give immediate priority to the unity of the party. All who participated in this leadership process will be welcomed and encouraged to become part of our common purpose, which is defeating the current government in the next election. The two of us on this leadership platform are friends and colleagues. We respect each other's hopes, and we'll work together to encourage all of our supporters to be part of the real fight that lies ahead, the next provincial election. No person or group will be left out if I'm your leader. I've had the privilege of working and meeting with a tremendous number and variety of people from every walk of life. And these experiences have given me an understanding of the values and aspirations of our citizens and a knowledge of each region of the province. I'm at this podium today because I deeply believe that the challenges facing our province can be successfully met by the 580,000 of us with a new approach to government, an approach drawing its strength from our core beliefs and traditions, the traditions that have made this province such a wonderful place to live and raise a family. Make no mistake about it, the people of the province are watching us as we make our decision today. They're looking for a PC party with the confidence to push into the future. They're looking for a PC leader who'll work with them and fight for them. When we leave this place, let's make sure we give people the leadership they're seeking. PC supporters and friends, I commit myself to the task of leading our party with dedication, with compassion, and plain hard work. I promise to serve you to the best of my abilities. This afternoon, I'm asking you for your support, and with your help, nothing's going to stop us now!
That was Lynn Varge in her speech to the convention here about 2 hours ago, really. Come back to the sound of Mr. Bojangles. A very different speech than the one that Loyola Sullivan gave, Kathy. Lynn Varge said on the day this campaign was announced, actually it was here, maybe in this room at this hotel, where she said she was going to put her focus on Clyde Wells. And the speech certainly didn't deter much from that today.
No, she is going to put her focus on Clyde Wells and the kind of government that he has provided for the people of this province. People are losing hope in this province, and we don't have a vision for the future, and she's providing that. And that came across, I think, in her speech today. She can beat Clyde Wells. She wants to do that. She can provide good government for the people of the province, and hopefully she's going to do that.
Charlie, you being on the other side, those lines were playing well to the audience today, the anti-Wells, anti-liberal lines. Did that help at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that Kathy and I are really on the same side. I mean, we're conservatives and we're trying to get the Conservative Party back so we can run this province in a slightly different fashion than it's now being ran. So temporarily we're maybe on opposite sides, but in the big game we're on the same team trying to do the same thing. No question what the Conservatives in this room want is they want somebody who can beat Clyde Wells and get us back into power in this province. So yeah, a lot of the lines, a lot of the cracks about Clyde and beating him in 89 stuff really keys up the crowd. It's what we want to hear. And there's no question that in her speech, some of that was really pretty well done to gear all the Conservatives in the room toward a certain direction, toward a leadership that she wants to do. So, yeah, it was a very professionally done speech. In a couple of parts of it, she seemed to be uncomfortable. She seemed to be a little apprehensive and a little nervous. But I guess considering what she's trying to do, and she's running for leadership in the party, I guess that's to be expected as well.
She talked about other things. The thing that struck me was being ready starting tomorrow for an election. Do Conservatives believe that an election is really perhaps within the next year in this province?
I don't think so. I mean, Clyde Wells, certainly if he stays there, and I don't really see much indication that he has any real intention to leave, has done what premiers should do. He hasn't called elections every 2.5 or 3 years like we did a couple of times when we were there. There really is no reason for that in a democratic process. If you get a mandate for 4 years, you should stay for 4 years. You can stretch it almost to 5, but it's not the way it should be. So I don't really see any reason whatsoever. Why would the government call an election? There's simply no reason for it. And I know we called an election in 85, and we had no reason to do it except to try and get re-elected. And we bloody nearly got killed by Leo Varge and the Liberals in that election. Another week of that campaign, and we would have been out of office 4 or 5 years earlier than we were. So you have to have a purpose, and I don't see any purpose for an election in Newfoundland, not now.
I'm not sure that I agree with that. I think Mr. Wells might be thinking it might be time to move on. There's quite a bit of scuttlebutt about the province with regard to that. A lot of it coming from his own people. So I think we have to start to get ready tomorrow.
Okay, well, somebody told us a few minutes ago here at the convention that we'll know who the winner is in at about 5:30. That's about 35, 38 minutes from now. Somebody who has had a run at Clyde Wells, wasn't successful, was Tom Rideout, former premier for a short time. He's standing by now with Debbie Cooper.
Thanks very much, Doug. And yes, I am joined now by Tom Rideout. And Mr. Rideout, you've been a long-time supporter of Lynn Varge. You listened very carefully to those speeches today. You were, I think, a little worried when you heard Mr. Sullivan. He had a pretty good speech, you were telling me. Tell me about your thoughts when you listened to them today.
Well, yeah, I was pretty impressed with Loyola's presentation and his crowd presentation and all of that. And I didn't see anything happening from Lynn Varge's perspective for quite a while. It was like dead air. And all of a sudden, but I began to think Lassinger must have something planned here, and by golly, he did. And it was a powerful presentation, a powerful entrance, a powerful speech by Lynn. I think she pressed all the right buttons, she hit all the right nerves, she said all the right things, and I was standing by a couple of people who had no visible paraphernalia support for anybody on them, who picked up Lynn Varge's signs after. So I think she did very well, and I think if there was such a thing as a speech putting her over the top, I think it will do it.
Now, our analysts, Doug Letto and our analysts, were talking about the possibility of the general election, and I mean, the question here, a lot of delegates are sizing up these two candidates, wondering which one can beat Clyde Wells, which one can win a general election against anybody. Can Lynn Varge do that? Well, there's one candidate who's already beaten Clyde Wells, and that's Lynn Varge. And I mean, the powerful presentation of that here today, I think, was, Lynn Varge was talking to Tories here today. This is a PC convention. She'll have to address the general populace of the province after she wins. But she's proven she can take Wells on head-to-head. She's proven she can beat him. I think she's proven she has the vision and the nerve and the determination and the will to take on what Newfoundland and Labrador needs to have taken on, and that's what leadership is all about, and I think she's proven that over and over and over. Well, we don't have the results now. In the event that it is a Sullivan win, can Mr. Sullivan win a general election for this party? Loyola Sullivan is an excellent candidate. I mean, we have two excellent candidates, and I think the PC party, with either one of those candidates, is in an excellent position to win the next election. I happen to have a preference, and I've made no bones about expressing that. But Loyola is powerful himself. He's committed. He's determined. He has a vision. He has a future in the politics of Newfoundland and Labrador. I think he's a little bit, lacking in experience vis-a-vis Lynn and that kind of thing. But, he's pretty powerful in his own right. And I think a lot of PCs would be very, very pleased to run on his coattails in the next election if he were the leader.
Mr. Rideout, Doug Letto here.
Hi, Doug.
One thing that we've discussed here briefly is, what if it isn't Clyde Wells that's leading the Liberals going into the next election? You're living in Ottawa these days, attending law school there. There's some talk that Brian Tobin might be coming back. From what you see up there and about Brian Tobin's star, do you think he's at all interested in leaving federal politics these days?
I don't think he's interested in leaving federal politics, but I mean, Brian Tobin is as popular across Canada now as Clyde Wells was after Meech Leak. And that was pretty popular. You know, Brian Tobin would be a powerful, populist leader of the Liberal Party if he were to come back to Newfoundland and Labrador. I agree, though, I don't think that Clyde Wells will lead the Liberal Party into the next election. I think it will be somebody else, whether it'll be whether it'll be Brian Tobin or Ed Roberts or Vince Baker or Fury or what, I don't know, but I don't think it'll be Clyde.
People have talked about the question of party unity coming out of this convention. There have been a few moments, a few acrimonious moments. You came out of the convention in '89 that certainly some people carried grudges with them. How does a leader of a party, apart from saying that we want a unified party, how do you, in the back rooms and in dealing with people, make it clear to them that you do want a united party and that you want them to work for you?
Well, you have to physically reach out and touch people. And I mean, I think Lynn Varge and Loyola Sullivan, both of them are very capable of doing that. I mean, there's bound to be bumps and bruises as a result of the competition in the trenches and among the troops. And there's going to be bruised egos at least. There might even be worse than that. But at the end of the day, whoever emerges as the leader will have to reach out and touch and feel and placate and be kind to and love, kill with kindness, kill with love their opponents. Because we're all one party, we're all for the one cause, and that is to offer a new day and a new vision for Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think either one of those candidates is quite capable of doing that.
And I just have one final question for you, Mr. Rideout. You've been in the position of being the candidate, waiting for the result of the vote. What do you think is going through these candidates' minds right now?
Look, this is pure torture. You know, I had to go through 4 ballots. Fortunately, the candidates here will only have to wait for 1. And, you know, I'm sure the guests on the stage there with Doug know what that's like. But it's pure hell, it's pure torture. You know, you wonder what you should have said, and you say the things that you thought you should have said, and you think about the person that you should have phoned last night that you didn't phone, and you wonder if it's only 1 vote. In my case, it was only 26. I think Lynn Varge will win by more than 26, but like Garfield Warren, it will be less than a Kentel, which is 112.
Thank you very much, Tom Rideout. And now we're going over to Carmel, and she's standing by with a strong Verge supporter. Carmel.
Yes, it's strong. For the last 16 years, Doris Hicks from Humber East has been a Lynn Varge supporter. Many delegates here think that the race is a fight between an experienced person with a proven track record versus someone with a new direction, a fresh face like Loyola Sullivan, something that Doris Hicks does not agree with. Ms. Hicks, you think that experience is Ms. Varge's strongest asset?
Yes, I certainly do. Mrs. Varge is a strong person. She has a proven record of her ability and her credibility. I live in her district for 38 years, and I have always worked for her. I find her to be honest, and this is why I vote for her. She is a winner.
Right. Can I ask, why is it that Ms. Varge seems to have such strong loyalty and long-term support from many of you?
Because she is liked in her district. She is devoted to all her constituents, and this is very, very helpful.
Can I ask you to compare the 2 campaigns, Lynn Varge's versus Loyola Sullivan?
Lynn Varge's campaign is, we didn't have a lot of money, but we did have good, loyal support. We had hard-working people, and this is what it takes to win a convention, hard-working people.
Thanks, Doris. I know you were nervous. Thank you for talking to us.
You're welcome.
That's it from here. Doug, back to you.
Thank you very much, Carmel. Tom Rideout mentioned a couple of interesting points, I thought, when I asked him that question. How do you reach out to all these people that you've been essentially fighting for the last few weeks, trying to fight in a kind way, I suppose, but he talked about love, kill them with kindness, kill them with love. But how do you really do that? I mean, Kathy, give me a sense of it.
Well, I think in our campaign, certainly we've tried to stay on the high road throughout the campaign, and I think to a large degree we've managed to do that, and to focus on the issues and who had the best ability to lead the party into victory, and to focus on the candidates themselves and compare on their presentation, on their experience, on their abilities, and so on. I think more than that, I think Lynn has already began to reach out. You know, she did that in her speech. She spoke to Loyola. They're going to be players on the same team, and she spoke to both camps. reminding them that we're all Tories, first and last, we're all Tories. And I think there you see the leadership, and we'll follow where they lead us. And I think they're leading us to a united party, coming out strong and fighting.
Well, Doug, just a couple of points. One is that Tom Ryder can say that, and Tom knows very well that after his leadership bid in '89, there were some very serious mistakes made in how we handled some of the people in the opposite camp. Fellows like Ron Dahl, fellows like John Butt, who really didn't think there was any place for them in the new party that was being Mr. Ryder's government and leadership. One of the things I think that's a lot more difficult for a governing party to go from a leadership convention into unity. It's a lot easier for an opposition party for the simple fact you don't have as many perks to pass out. And a lot of people support a leader in a leadership campaign, especially when you're in the government. In caucus, they'll support a guy because they want to be in cabinet or stay in cabinet. As finance people, they'll support you because they think they can get something back from the government. So as a government going through leadership to election, you have to be real careful. In opposition, there's simply not that many perks to give out. We just got to sit down and say, hey, if there's ever going to be a perk to give out, then we have to all work together to accomplish our total objective, which is to be elected. So I don't think there will be a unity problem in the Conservative Party, whether Lynn or Loyola runs this show in a half an hour's time or so.
But I gather from both of you, though, that you've got to do more than pay what yesterday were your opponents' lip service. You've got to do more than say that we want a united party, we're all going to, you know, tug on the same oar in the same direction. It has to be more meaningful than that.
Yeah, well, obviously it has to be. I mean, we want to be the governing party of this province, and it's there for the taking. And we can have that if we work together. And every one of us here knows that we have to do that, that all of us have to pull our weight. We've got two marvelous candidates here. So whoever wins, it shouldn't be difficult for all of us to come together to do what needs to be done for the people of this province, ourselves included.
I think, Doug, it's not so much either just individuals. It's not just taking one person from one district and getting that person on side. I think what we have to do is that when this convention is over today, is that there's going to be some real differences in policy. I mean, the PC party is a coalition of a lot of different people. You've got very far right-wing conservatives, and you certainly have some very left-leaning, supportive of the modern way that many societies are going. And that has to be put together. So it's putting policies and putting things in place that can make a party unified. And I think Lynn or Loyola will have to be very careful to make sure that you don't turn off people on either side of the party, because to be elected successfully, you have to be in the middle of the road, and you can't be on one side or the other, not very far.
One thing people have talked about in this campaign is that with two candidates, there's this sense that people say it's a dull campaign, but when you come to the convention like this, when you have a multiple number of candidates, say more than two, you get all these plots and subplots developing, and you get the kind of animosity that Charlie referred to a minute ago. And I'm wondering, on the one hand, maybe it's a duller campaign, but is it easier to make up if you only have two candidates?
I think you're right, Doug. I think it's a lot easier to make up. You didn't go out and make all these alliances with the second and the third and the fourth candidate, and the guy who told you he was running third was going to support you, and all of a sudden changes his or her mind and goes with the other guy. No question, a lot of acrimony comes from that process, and I think somewhere, if not at this convention, our next convention, we've got to find a different way to elect leaders. I don't really like this process. I don't like the idea of slates. I don't think it's really democratic. It leads itself to a lot of different things happening, whether it's chicken or sub sandwiches. There's things happening in that process that really shouldn't happen. So I'd like to see a different process, but I think you're absolutely right. Two people race, a lot easier to make friends afterwards.
I absolutely agree. I think the real fight in this campaign has been during the delegate selection. That's where it took place. So we've already had a month to start to heal wounds and to talk lovingly to one another, trying to sway people over to one camp or the other. I think the one thing that we've learned throughout this, because I absolutely agree with Charlie, that this process is flawed. And whatever we do before we do this again, we have to find a better way of doing it. And personally, I believe in one person, one vote. And we have to do away with this delegate business altogether and open it right up so that everybody in the province who wants to participate in this process has the opportunity.
I think, Doug, one of the things that happened in this leadership convention, maybe because there was only two candidates, and I guess also because you're not the government, is the fact that it may have been a publicly reasonably dull campaign. Internally within the PC party, it wasn't dull at all. I mean, when you were getting 500 and 600 and 700 people out to nominating meetings in many places, and some of them you had to do it twice, elect your executive at one meeting, you got 400 or 500 out.
a lot of people that are in this room spent a lot of time making phone calls, making contacts, and getting people to come to a process to get them elected to get here. So internally within the party, it really wasn't dull at all.
We had about 15,000 people participate in the process. It was marvelous, and it's been tremendously hard work for a whole lot of people.
One of the things, I guess, that people have talked a lot about here today is the recipe back to power for the Conservatives. And certainly up to a few months ago when Len Sims announced he was leaving, people immediately thought about Danny Williams, the St. John's lawyer. He announced fairly quickly that he wasn't interested this time and said, I believe I'm paraphrasing him correctly when he said if he doesn't go this time, he won't go at all. Danny Williams is standing by now with Carmel Smith.
Thanks, Doug. Any regrets, Mr. Williams, that you didn't run?
No, no regrets. I think when I made the decision, of course, I had mixed emotions, but I made the decision, I think, for all the right reasons, and I don't have any regrets. I think what has to be said, though, is I think you do have to admire the people that do step up. You know, there's a tendency out there for people to criticize politicians, but the people that do step into public life and make the sacrifice, make a big sacrifice. And I think I respect them for that. Having seen sort of what Loyola and Lynn have gone through here, there's a lot of hype and a lot of pizzazz, but, you know, after it's all over and we win or lose, then they have to start tomorrow morning and get the party ready for an election. And that's a big task, and you got to admire them.
Yes. And speaking of hype and pizzazz, it would appear from the presentation tonight, Lynn Varge's side had a lot of hype pizzazz, and Mr. Sullivan's speech and the presentation was much more low-key.
Well, it's a question of style. I mean, I'm not surprised with Lynn's presentation because, you know, John Lassinger is behind it, and then that's Lass's style, and of course, if you pay the bucks for a good hired gun, that's what you get, and he delivered. And he did the same thing in Tom Rideout's campaign. I think it was the same theme song that was used here today as well, and that's his style, that's the way he presents. What I liked about Loyola is, you know, what you saw there today was Loyola Sullivan, and that's why I support him. It was the man, it was solid, it was a people presentation. His speech was fabulous, in my opinion. Behind him, he had a backdrop of all the MHAs and all the support. So that's what Loyola's all about. A big video and a lot of pizzazz, I don't think would have lended any credibility to Loyola, and it would have been out of character for him.
Mr. Williams, Doug Letto here.
Yes, Doug.
When we spoke earlier in the week, you talked about the soft support and how people like yourself would be pursuing these people all weekend. Well, they're counting the ballots now, so give us a sense of how you think it went. Were you able to get enough of that soft support in your camp to stay, enough of theirs to come over perhaps to make a difference?
Doug, there was very little soft support around. I think everybody came committed. If there was a handful of people that I was dealing with directly that I thought were soft, that would be as many as it was. There were some undecided, and that again was probably a handful, but it was certainly under 10, so the numbers were not significant. I think most people came to this convention with their minds made up. It was a question of just how many turned out, and that's what's probably going to decide it in the end.
Do you still think at this late minute that your candidate, Mr. Sullivan, can win it?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is nearly a dead heat. I mean, I think this is a very, very close race, and I spent the last half an hour out in the corridors, and this is too close to call. And that's good. That's great for the party. I think if this was a foregone conclusion, then there wouldn't be as much interest, but everybody is hanging on here and biting their nails, and I think it's just been fabulous. It's been a good day.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Williams. Doug, back to you.
Thank you, Carmel. We've noticed that some people have started filing back into the hall. It's going to be about another 20 minutes before we get the results of this election. Quite an interesting one. A lot of people certainly surprised that there's been as much interest in it as there is. When it started, people, I think there was a feeling of disappointment that there were only two candidates, and people, I heard certainly people say the same old crowd, I think meaning that only somebody from inside the elected wing of the party ran. Charlie Power alluded to this earlier, that it certainly created a lot of excitement within the party. Is it enough to come out of a convention and then dovetail with the kind of organizing that needs to take place now at the district level to get people motivated, candidates identified for the election? That'll be coming at least within, say, 2 years.
Well, that process has already started in that we've got active PC associations now in all 52 districts. So that's a big start, you know, in our organizational setup. And we have to start to build on that. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done yet, but we're off to a good start, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got, if two people could generate 15,000 persons to come to nominating meetings around Newfoundland in part of it in middle winter, that shows that there's at least an inclination out there that people are not satisfied with what we have and maybe they're looking for an alternative.
Now we've got to go from this convention today and really build on it. A lot of that is organizational. I think the other part, Doug, in modern politics at any level is that you have to have a reason to change the faces of government. People now won't fall for just, hey, put me in there because we want to be in there. There has to be real reasons. And in Newfoundland, there has to be, the Conservative Party has to build on an entirely different approach, adjust some of our policies in accordance with what the people of the province think. I mean, it is no point for the Conservative Party to be against educational reform. The people of this province, the parents and students, want educational reform. And any party that denies that is not going to be won't well serve the public or be well served in return. So we've got to get some real good reasons of why our faces should be in there and the Liberal faces should not. And that's a big job, both organizationally and policy-wise, I think.
And I think the day is fast disappearing, and thankfully so, that you can say what you like to get yourself elected and then do absolutely what you like. And that day is gone.
And should be.
And so it should be. And people and politicians all over the province and all over the country have to realize who elects them and why, and never forget it. And I think it will be a better day for all of us when that happens right across the board.
Absolutely. The idea of politicians and Jean Payne in St. John's West is a good example. I mean, there's not very many people in St. John's West happy with that situation, but you can't change it because the process there, you get elected and you stay there. And I think there's a lot of new things have to happen in government, in policy, and how we run things, and how we respond to what people expect us to do as politicians in the process. And we've got to make some significant changes in how the Conservative Party thinks about a lot of those things.
We should tell you that they announced here just a moment ago that the result will be known in 15 minutes. And to go over a couple of numbers that we gave you earlier, 725 delegates had the right to vote here today. It means the magic number is 363. So anybody getting more than getting 363 or more is the winner. Debbie Cooper is standing by now with John Carter, former MHA for St. John's North.
Thanks very much, Doug. And Mr. Carter was an MHA for 18 years. He was telling me he's staunchly behind Ms. Varge, and he was just saying before we came on the air, it's going to be 50+ in Ms. Varge's favor. Give us the exact number and why you feel so confident that she's going to take this today.
Well, I've been counting the yellow shirts. And that seems to indicate to me about a 10 or 15% preponderance.
What's your opinion of what's gone on here today as conventions go? Give us your feel for this one.
Well, I think Lynn spoke superbly, and I know that she meant every word of it. A lot of it were her own thoughts that she's distilled over the last few months, over the last few years. I have tremendous confidence in her. She's tough, she's strong, she's sensible, and she's willing to talk to everyone. I have the utmost confidence in her. I've seen her at work. I know one of the portfolios that she had to manage, education, which was a very, very difficult one, and I think she did a very good job.
Now, education, of course, is one of the issues that that any government, if it was a Conservative government, will have to deal with. What strength do you think she would bring to that whole issue, the issue of education reform?
She'll bring reasonableness. I have my own ideas what we should do, and I think they're fairly straightforward, but whether I would agree with her or not, I'm sure that she'll be extremely reasonable in anything she does, and the denominations and the various interests, I think, will find her very reasonable. And I think that's the only way to solve our problems.
Now, there was some talk before this convention that it was a really dull race. There wasn't much excitement. But do you think within the party itself there's enough enthusiasm generated to be of benefit to the party now as they look ahead to the next general election?
Well, this afternoon I felt that the atmosphere was electric. You were in danger of getting an electric shock. And I haven't felt that since the heady days of 1971 and 72. So I think there's possibly a rebirth in the making.
Thanks very much, John Carter. And back to you, Doug.
Thank you, Debbie. Well, looking at the hall here now, I don't think you'd be in danger of getting electric shock. There just aren't that many people here. Charlie Power, is that an ordinary thing? I've been at a number of these, and you seem to forget from one to the other. It's about 12 minutes before we're to get the result. Is that an ordinary or a usual thing that there wouldn't be that many people in the hall?
No, it's not, actually. I mean, certainly when there's, I think maybe it's this one ballot thing again. They know there's one ballot, you're in and you're out and it's over with. But I know in the other days, when you knew there was going to be, there was 5 candidates or 6 in the last one, you knew there was going to be more than one ballot, everybody's out pumping hands and shaking hands and trying to get those people to come to our side or your side whenever it happened. So there was a lot more enthusiasm between votes. Here now, sort of everybody voted. Thank God that part of it is over. They're taking a little break and they'll be back here with some enthusiasm in 10 minutes or so. but it's certainly different. Yes, Doug, no question about it.
Maybe we should be out in the bar or the coffee shop. Maybe that's where the action is this afternoon. Some of the Verge supporters over there now trying to get a bit of action going. One thing that strikes me about all of this is that we're approximately, I guess, midway in the liberal term, and people ordinarily would be thinking about an election sometime in the next 2 years. Is this the absolute best time to have a leadership convention if you're to prepare yourself and to be in place for the next election?
I think not. I think Lynn obviously wanted to resign, so it's perfectly okay to do that. I think we should have put maybe an interim leader, a guy like Neil Windsor who's there, who's not going to run, but is a senior person, and wait for a year or so. Had we waited for a year down the road, maybe Danny Williams would have changed his mind. Maybe Doug Moores might have been there. God knows what could have happened, and you might have had a different face on things near closer to an election campaign. Albeit now that it's done, we have to go out. I think from the Sullivan Verge point of view, I think Mrs. Verge is better prepared to run an election campaign on the short term. I think and believe that Loyola Sullivan will be a better leader on the long term. So if Loyola can get 2 years under his belt, we might have a much better shot at it. But a snap election, I think, would certainly hurt us with Mr. Sullivan and help us, or give us the best chance with Mrs. Verge. And that's what people are talking about. When will the next election be?
Kathy, well, putting really that same question to you, this idea, is this the most opportune time for a new leader? Did it matter to Ms. Verge, the timing of Mr. Sims leaving?
I don't think it did. You know, I would have preferred to wait another year, but I'm quite happy to go with Lynn whenever she decided to go. I wanted her to go the last time. She decided not to. I was one of the people that were encouraging her from the time that Lynn said he was going to resign, and I'm delighted to be with her anytime she chose to go.
Okay. Well, talking about Len Sims's timing in deciding to relinquish the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party, he's standing by now.
Thanks, Doug. And Mr. Sims, well, they were just discussing the timing of your resignation. Is there ever a good time to go? Is everybody satisfied, or is nobody ever satisfied in these things?
Well, I don't think anybody can ever please everybody. I don't think there's anybody in the world that can do that, or it ever has been. So, the reason I did it, obviously, is to give the new leader time to develop the plans and so on, and keeping in mind that the next election would be scheduled for probably about 2 years. I had a year and a half to prepare after I became leader, so I wish I had another 6 months, frankly. So I think the timing is good in my own view anyway, and most of the reaction has been pretty positive.
Before I go any further, who did you vote for today?
I voted for the winner.
Who is?
Well, we'll know in 15 minutes, and that's who I'll be supporting afterwards as well.
So, in other words, you're not going to name that person. But anyway, our guests, our analysts, and Doug Letto were talking about who would be better positioned to win an election. Can you give us your assessment of the candidates heading into a general election? Who would be better able to win?
Well, I've said all along, both of them have assets and liabilities, I guess, and it's all in the eye of the beholder. Both of them, either of them, in my view, would make a good leader and would make a good premier. And I have said that right from day one, and I meant it. And so with that in mind, I think either of them would have a good chance to win a government, because of the fact there's a lot more to it than simply the leader. I mean, there's the party, development of the policy aspect, making sure you're financially sound, and all of those kinds of things. And I think either of them could do that.
What about the assessment if there were a snap election, although you don't think there's going to be one, if there were a snap election, that Lynn Varge would be better placed to perform well for the party?
Well, if there were a snap election, whoever the leader is will have to be better placed. But I just don't speculate about that sort of thing. I don't think there's a chance in the world that that's going to occur.
Would you speculate on who Loyola Sullivan or Lynn Varge will be facing in the next election? Do you think Clyde Wells will be there to fight another day?
My own view is I think Clyde Wells is going to stay around. That's my view. It's not the popular view. Everybody seems to think that he's going. You hear it a lot from the Liberal caucus, but frankly, I think that's a lot of wishful thinking on the part of the members of the Liberal caucus.
There was much made...
My own view is going to stay around.
There was much made here today, and especially in the speeches, that Lynn Varge has beaten Clyde Wells before, and she played on that. What do you think of that?
Oh, I think that's, I would do the same thing if I were Lynn Varge, having beaten Clyde Wells. There's no question about that. And she has the ability to do that, and so does Loyola Sullivan. I mean, they both have the abilities. Look, people look at it, I said it's in the eye of the beholder. Both of them have assets and liabilities. Miss Varge, her asset is her experience. In the eyes of some, that may be her liability. Mr. Sullivan has a lack of experience, only a few years in politics. That could be his asset or his liability. It depends on what the delegates are looking for. And it's always in the eye of the beholder. But I personally know both of them very well, and I'd be comfortable working with and supporting either one of them.
Mr. Sims, Doug Letto here.
Hi, Doug.
Under your leadership, the party wiped out a substantial amount of debt that it had, debt that certainly was a factor in the last election. How much more of an advantage will it be to the party going into the next election debt-free than it was for you in the last election, where you had a substantial amount of debt, and I gather you weren't able to put on the campaign that you wanted to?
Well, it'll make a big difference. We went into the last election when it was called with less than $20,000 in the bank, so that was quite a challenge for us to try to develop a campaign that was reasonable and credible. This time we'll have some money in the bank, and not only that, we have our debt paid off, which means we've restored our credibility within the community, in the business community and so on, where you're going to be seeking funds when the time comes. We'll be in good shape, both financially and both in terms of policy and preparation, and in terms of having a new leader with an aggressive approach.
Thank you very much, Lynn Sims. Doug?
Thank you, Debbie. People are starting to file back into the hall now. By my count, 6 or 7 minutes, maybe 5 minutes from now, we'll be hearing the result of the vote that came here today between Loyola Sullivan and Lynn Varge for the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party. Lynn Sims' resignation becomes effective on May the 1st. I believe that's Monday. For an assessment of what's happening on the floor now, Carmel Smith is standing by.
Hi, Doug.
If Carmel isn't ready, Mr. Power, there's something that Mr. Sims talked about, I think, that we can pick up on, and that's this whole question of finances. In this campaign, and Kathy, you can jump in anytime you want, I gather that there were many more donors, fewer large donors. Is that a fact of the times?
Oh, yes, I think it is. It's certainly, because that's certainly been true of our campaign. We've had all kinds of people involved in the fundraising that have never been involved in that sort of thing before. We've had people give dinner parties. We've had people give $5 from their pocket. We've had kids putting pennies. There haven't been a lot of large contributors. I think that day is gone, especially in this economy.
I'm not sure, Doug, that either of the candidates wouldn't have much easier found a couple of real large donors to fund the campaign. But I think it's a healthier process to have a larger, broad base of people contributing to the finances of a political party. The old days of having 2 or 3 people be the bag man, run the show, and then pull all kinds of strings after the election to get government favors. That's a system that the public simply doesn't want anymore, and I think it's healthy to do it this way, albeit I'm sure there's some days the candidates would have liked to have a large donation show up, but the money is just not out there. I mean, I know the fundraisers for Sullivan's camp, and I mean, it was nickel and dime all the way. I mean, there's simply no money out there to give large donations, especially to an opposition party. So, function the economy, and maybe something good will come out of it, that there'll be a better way to fundraise for these types of things.
Absolutely.
Well, the buzz has returned to the hall now, and we talked a little while ago about the atmosphere. Carmel Smith is standing by with her assessment of that.
Thanks, Doug. Here on the floor, things are winding down. People look exhausted, flopped in their chairs, waiting to hear the results. We still have Sullivan delegates insisting that they are going to win, maybe by a small margin, but yes, they still feel they will win. Varge delegates say the same thing. Yes, they are going to win. But Varge delegates who were a little discouraged yesterday, and maybe even earlier today, are feeling much more optimistic and enthusiastic today, a sign that they were really happy with Lynn Varge's speech. Someone told me that Ms. Varge has never performed as well. She's not known for being a great speech maker, and that today she really came through. Her supporters are delighted. So it's still anybody's guess as to what might happen, but people here are just waiting. They'll be really relieved, I'm sure, when the results are in. Doug?
Thank you, Carmel. Both candidates, of course, their speeches now are ancient history, but let's talk one more bit about it. Coming into the speeches today, whose was it to lose on a bad speech, and whose was it to really gain?
I think either one of them, really. I mean, Sullivan's style, Loyola, everyone says he's got a real thick Irish brogue down the shore. Had he made some real faux pas in his speech, yeah, he would have been in real big trouble. But on the other hand, Lynn is experienced, is expected to handle the public, the audience properly, and do a real good speech. So either anybody makes a mistake, it could have been big time trouble, because there is a lot of people that would, I think, would just change sides if they saw, uh-oh, the person I thought was going to be great is not going to be great. So,
yeah, I agree. And a half hour is a long time to speak. And you have to keep that energy and enthusiasm there. And I think they were both fairly successful at doing that.
People talk about this brogue or this accent, but I mean, I've been all over Newfoundland and Labrador, and in practically at least every bay, there's a different dialect, and it always struck me that's what made people so interesting and so approachable. They felt so comfortable. Why did anybody think that this should be an issue? Should we all be speaking like people from Toronto?
I think there's a thought process in the Conservative Party that we have to have somebody who's pretty slick, speaks the English grammar exactly the way it's supposed to be spoken someplace, that is neutral, maybe St. John's or Corner Brook or something. But I think they're right. One of the great strengths of Newfoundland is that there's so many different parts to it, and our brogues and accents are a part of that. But it did become an issue in a couple of places. People saying, well, Howard Towney's going to vote for a Bayman who's has that thick a brogue. And I mean, even within St. John's, there are different accents in different places. And maybe it was just something that would distract attention away from the real purpose, but I can't see it being a real problem.
Not only do you have a different accent in every bay, you have a different accent in every community in the bay. And as part of our heritage and something I'm proud of, and I don't offer any apologies for.
I was going to say, with all due respect to people who call themselves townies, they have their own distinct dialect, and the ones I know are quite proud of it. Well, certainly the atmosphere has picked up quite a bit here in the hall now. They're telling us it's actually going to be 10 minutes before they tell us what the vote is. So I guess when you have a crowd in a room like this, you milk it for what it's worth.
Yeah, well, that's right. You're going to keep the people here. We're going to keep the news media here a little bit longer, which is part of the process. So it's a lot of hype here now, I tell you. Everybody wants to see where this is going. It's a very exciting time for candidates. Election nights are the same way. I mean, when you get your name on a ballot, when you get down to this part of it, it's always, did I really do it right? And did those people really vote for me? And would they vote for me? Why would they vote for me sometimes? So I'm sure both Mrs. Varge and Loyola now they're pretty white-knuckled over at either side of the room.
Kathy, let's assume for a minute, let's say that Lynn Varge didn't win here today. Would this be as much as she'd want in politics? Would she, when her term runs out, say, I don't think I'll run next time?
Oh, no. I think in Lynn we have a person who's truly committed to this province and to the people of the province. And I think she's going to be around for a long time, and I think we're all very lucky because she's going to be.
Shirley Power, what's your sense of that?
It could go either way. I agree with Kathy. I hope she does stay around if she doesn't win today. She's got a lot to contribute and has contributed a lot to the social conscience side of the Conservative Party and the way our society is evolving. But there is a time. I mean, after 15 years, you go through this process, the high emotion of it, and the obviously terrible disappointment of it if you lose. So it may be a time for someone to say, maybe I should change careers and do things. I would hope that would not happen, that she'd stay around. And obviously, Sullivan, whose lack of experience is one of his great weaknesses, is going to need all the experienced people that he can find around him to lead the party and do the things properly. So I would certainly hope she wouldn't quit. But it is a time in your life where you're going to make some judgments. Am I going to stay and do this for another 10 years, or am I going to do something else?
But a big part of running in politics and winning or losing is the perception. And I'm thinking that if she didn't win today, would the public out there say, well, you know, she had her chance, she lost, and her stature is lessened?
No question. When you lose something, your stature is lessened. I don't think there's any... This is a competitive business. If you lose, you lose. And obviously that hurts to the core because you lose very publicly. It's not a private loss. It's very public and very embarrassing. So.
It's not something we've spent a great deal of time thinking or talking about. We're so convinced that we've got a winner on our hands that we can only look forward to the future.
We'll see in a very short period of time, I guess, how that works. But certainly for Lynn's case, she has to make some changes, and hopefully she's going to stay and whatever and do. And we'll discuss this in about 10 minutes, I guess, to say who's staying where. One thing about Sullivan, he's staying. He's going to be around the political process for a long period of time as well.
Kathy, you've been with Lynn Varge since the very first day, I suppose before the first day, because you said you tried to get her to run before. How do you feel right now? This is just really moments before the result comes out. Give us a sense, perhaps, of how you feel and then what she might be doing right now.
I'm excited. I'm happy. I've got 15,000 butterflies doing somersaults in my stomach, but I'm full of positive enthusiasm.
Okay. Let's get a sense now of what the delegates on the floor are doing. We'll just stop chattering for a few minutes and see what the action is out there. Just saw Lynn Varge there a minute ago. She certainly looks relaxed, and I guess when it comes to this point you might as well be relaxed, because all the things that were possible to do have been done or left undone. I think, Charlie, you were saying, no, it was Tom Rideout who said you think a lot about the phone call you didn't make, the person that you didn't shake hands with, and but that's all over now.
Well, elections are like that. It's all over now. You sit back and say, look, I did the best I could, and if the will of the convention is that I win it, then it's there, and if it's not, you just have to accept it and go on, sort of. And maybe it's a big weight off your shoulder and say, okay, I can lead a normal life now instead of that other person who's got to do all the other things. So it can go either way.
And they're both tremendous workers. They're dogs for work, and they've worked tremendously hard. And I don't know what much more either one of them could have done than they've done. So it's a time to relax. I don't think there were many stones left unturned in this one.
Kathy, you ran in the last election in Fortune Hermitage.
Yes, I did.
Against Oliver Langdon. Was there a point when you thought it was close? Was there a point when you thought, gee, if we can do a bit more, we can get it? Take us inside that feeling.
I can't say that I ever, when I went in, I knew I was going to have an uphill battle all the way, and that the odds were in Oliver's favor, not in mine, and we changed some of the momentum. We turned it around. It was a process that once I got into it, I enjoyed tremendously. Very hard work, but I had no illusions about what the outcome might be. And I must say, Lynn Sims was absolutely wonderful to me and with me, and so supportive of me all through the whole process. It was something that I really enjoyed doing.
One of the things talking about Sullivan and Loyola this morning is so tenacious, like Ted says, he works so hard, is that when he was coming in to make his speech, he was questioning his workers and saying, did we move up those 3 alternates from the Eagle River or Torngate? So he's still tallying numbers when he's walking in the room. So.
Let me interrupt you there, Charlie. Steve Delaney, the Chief Returning Officer for the Progressive Conservative Party, just came in the hall. He had a piece of paper. I'm assuming that it's the result of the vote here today. It's impossible at this moment to see quite what's happening there, but Steve Delaney, the Chief Returning Officer for the party, Jim Oxford, who's the Financial Compliance Chair, just went to the stage.
Kathy and I are going to make our predictions now. I'm saying Sullivan by 18 votes.
I'm saying Varge by 45.
Okay.
We'll see.
Sullivan by 18, says Charlie Power, and Kathy Dunderdale says Varge by 40. I don't think we'll really have to wait that much longer to find out. You can see through all of those placards, these are the people I mentioned a minute ago. Steve Delaney is the man with the beard there. Jim Oxford with the light sweater. I'm not sure who has their back to us. Maybe just take in a bit more atmosphere of this convention in the final moments, maybe the final seconds before the result is announced. That's Jim Oxford stepping up to the mic. No, it isn't. It's Doug Adams, party president.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could lower your signs, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the results of our balloting. Total number of ballots cast, 719. Number of spoiled ballots, 0. Results have been verified by our Chief Electoral Officer, Steve Delaney, and Mike Wilson. The results of the voting in alphabetical order: Loyola Sullivan, 358, Lynn Varge, 361. The new leader and the next premier of our province, Miss Lynn Varge. Close result here at this convention. People said it was close. I don't think they ever figured it would be this close. Lynn Varge defeating Loyola Sullivan for the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party by, count them, 3 votes. 3 votes. Charlie Power and Kathy Dunderdale, well, you were both way off. Did you ever in your mind think it would be this close?
Never, not for a moment, but I've always said, and we've always said, 1 vote would do us.
I think, Doug, when the point is that we're saying that basically you're talking about 700 people voting, and Kathy is saying in her wild optimism that it's 40, and I'm saying in a little bit more caution that it's 18. That is a real horse race, no matter how you do it. I think it's democracy at the finest. There we go. It just shows how people are.
The point we talked about with Tom Ryder, where he said you wonder if you should have called this extra person.
Oh,
this really proves, I guess, that if you go out and hustle, everyone really does count.
Doug, you may remember I won my first election by 8 or 9 votes, then I lost one by 9, then I won one by 1 time. So I know 1 vote makes some difference, and it literally will drive Loyola and his people wild more and say, why didn't we get those 2 or 3 people, you know? But that's the way it goes.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of Lynn Varge signs here now, but I just scanned the other side of the auditorium. There are people on Loyola Sullivan's side standing around looking at each other, I think wondering really what happened, and what happened is very little perhaps in the difference, but it's the result that
you almost can't blame them for being bewildered. I mean, put all that work in, and to come within 3 votes of winning, sometimes you'd be better off losing by 300 and say, look, it wasn't meant to be. But now you're going to say, look, we were almost there, a little bit of extra effort, we might have done it. So bewilderment and deep disappointment, and I guess the question we just had, that Lynn Varge is going to stay in politics, Loyola Sullivan is going to stay in politics and help her out, and we'll have a very strong party, hopefully, when this is all done. Very strong.
How much does the closeness of this race add to the party now? It was quite a competitive race, a large participation rate. 719 people came. Does this help the party a great deal to have this kind of convention?
I think it does. I think it speaks to the caliber of the candidates that we had here today. And we've got they're just 2 of the many tremendous people we have in this party.
Okay, Kathy, Lynn Varge is at the podium. Let's go over here what she has to say.
Mr. Sullivan to the stage, please.
stage with Lynn Varge. He's probably going to make it unanimous. Let's listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank all of you, and a particular congratulations to Lynn Varge on a great victory here today. Back in January, when I made a decision to run for the leadership of this party, I made a decision to run for the party and to take it where I felt our party needed to go. And I said from day one in this campaign, and I've been asked probably 5,000 times, if anyone doubts where Loyola Sullivan stands, I said my #1 goal in this campaign is to elect a leader to bring us back to victory, and #2 is to elect Loyola Sullivan. And anyone who knows me know that I never get too excited in victory, or I never get too low in defeat. And it was a tremendous race for our party, down to 2 people making a decision, basically, and I think that's tremendous for our party and the enthusiasm here at this convention, and I have enjoyed every single minute of this campaign, and I will be working for a party in the future for the people in Ferryland District that elected me and supporting Lynn Varge as our leader. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank a family who seems to be a lot more disappointed than I am, but I owe a lot to my family for their support in all my endeavors over the years, and I thank them deeply.
As I said earlier, nothing's going to stop us now. I want to thank and congratulate Loyola Sullivan for the excellent campaign he and his supporters waged over the last 100 days. Loyola, the keen competition has helped our party and invigorated us. The work that you and your supporters have done helped set up and revive active associations in all 52 districts. Loyola, I'm looking forward to working with you. I need your advice, your counsel, your hard work. Most of all, I want your friendship. Together, you and I will lead this party to victory in the next election. Loyola, it shouldn't take too much work for you and me to throw out the current Wells Liberal regime. After all, they've become a caretaker government. While Clyde and Ed Roberts make plans for their retirement, they have a farmer in fisheries. They have a justice minister, not really a justice minister, pretending to take care of justice. And in the meanwhile, Clyde Wells is taking care of his friends. I want to reiterate my thanks to Len Sims for the tremendous work he's done over the last few years. Len has certainly left this party Len has left our party much stronger because of his hard work and untiring efforts. I want everyone to know that in addition to needing to work with Loyola Sullivan, I need to work with all the MHAs who supported him in this race. I need Bill Matthews and Glenn Tobin, Ed Byrne, Fabian Manning, Nick Kareen, Harvey Hodder, Roger Fitzgerald, and Alex Snow. I need every single one of you. I certainly need the continued support of the 5 MHAs who supported me in this campaign. Neil Windsor, Jack Byrne, Alvin Hewlett, Paul Shelley, and Rick Woodford. Our caucus of 16, now 15 with Len's retirement, soon to be back to 16 with Mike Mackey's election in Grand Falls. Our caucus has always worked well together. Actually, we've had a remarkable record of unity. When you think back over the years, the PCs have been together and cohesive and good to one another, even at the low points. As I stand here now, I'm reminded of the words of Helen Keller, the American writer who became a spokesperson for all who are challenged. She said, "Keep your face to the sunshine, and you cannot see the shadows." Well, this afternoon, as I look at our party, I see brightness, yellow. I see a great future. All of us are going to work together to field dynamic and aggressive candidates in the next election and to win a strong majority government. As I said this afternoon, we are going to privatize Clyde Wells. We're going to return him to private life. I want to heartily and warmly and sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank the hundreds of people who supported me during this campaign. All of you who supported the new style of leadership I talked about, I'm deeply indebted to. I especially want to thank the delegates from Humber East, including my mother and father. They've worked for me and supported me and helped me succeed in politics over the last 16 years. I also have to warmly thank my husband, Bob, who also has worked with me. Who's worked with me in every campaign and who was a tower of strength in this leadership race. And thank you to all the volunteers who made up the campaign organization over the last 100 days. As I said earlier, the work of preparing for the next election begins tomorrow. We'll do it together. Loyola and I will be in the forefront, along with the other MHAs. All of you will be part of it. No person or group will be left out. Everyone who took part in this fantastic leadership process will be welcomed and encouraged to become part of the common purpose, which is defeating the current Wells liberal regime in the months ahead. Nothing's going to stop us now.
There you have Lynn Varge delivering her victory speech to the convention here, certainly making every effort to reach out to all the people who weren't on her campaign, making an effort to reach out to them and say that not only are they invited to be part of her team, but she wants them to bend down with her to the task of defeating the Liberal government. As these speeches go, I'll start with Charlie, seeing he's on the other side. Charlie, as these speeches go, what kind of a gesture is it that she made here today to Sullivan's team, including the MHAs who supported her?
I think it's not so much as what she said, but how she said it. I think there wasn't any doubt in anybody's mind her. She's very sincere. She wants Loyola Sullivan to work with her. She needs the people who supported Loyola within the caucus and outside to build a stronger party. And she's got a very difficult chore to do. I mean, we've been out of government for a fair period of time. We still have a long ways to go to achieve our objectives. We need a lot of people doing it together. And Lynn's very sincere approach, but that's the way she is. I mean, she's a warm, kind person. She wants people to work, and there'll be lots there for everyone to do. And I'm sure that Loyola Sullivan on his side, albeit he's probably very disappointed when he gets to himself and he gets a chance to think about all this, I'm sure he'll come back with the same vigor that he does almost everything with and do everything he can to help Lynn build a real strong party. So the universe unfolds as it should, I guess.
Absolutely, I agree with everything Charlie said. With Lynn Varge, what you see is what you get. She really is sincere, as she appears to be. And Loyola is a tremendous asset to this party, and we haven't heard the last of Loyola.
No, he'll be around.
And
it's hard to forget the margin, 3 votes. When people talk about this, I asked this I think a few minutes ago, but when people talk about this, will they talk in warm terms about this convention, or will they say, you know, we only could have gotten those 3 votes, we would have beaten Varge? Just reflect on that for a minute.
I think what will happen is that a lot of, tomorrow morning, it's night and tomorrow, a lot of people are going to say, we only had done something else. If only we had got down to St. John's East Extern and got a few more people and got those 5 delegates that we lost. A lot of the delegate meetings were lost by 15 and 20 votes. And with the right person on the slate and a few more phone calls, you could have got that, won those slates easily. So, sure, there'll be a lot of second guessing tomorrow for the loser side. And the winner never has the second guess, I suspect. So, there'll be a lot of worrying about that, but I think that is only very short-lived, Doug and Kathy. Monday morning, you go back to work.
I know, when we start to review this and plan for another day, I think we'll think about all of those delegates there's some delegates out there that we had elected that weren't able to come here for one reason. I mean, we would have used that helicopter time to get them here.
What looms so large tonight, though, is that the 5 or 6 delegates on Fogo who couldn't come,
absolutely.
They would have been the difference today.
Yes.
So, for the sake of a box of chicken, there goes something, right?
So anybody there has any political aspirations, don't give chicken to anybody.
Well,
there's a certain way to do business.
Perhaps there is something to the phrase chicken cacciatore.
Well, I think, Doug, one of the points that should be made that Loyola said there is that sometimes it's your supporters and your family who hurt the most. If there is a negative side to politics, politicians pay their money and take their chances. I got nominated, you go out and you do it. And I really feel somewhat sad for the Sullivan family, whom I've known for so long. And they're the people that'll be more sad than Loyola tomorrow.
Mr. Sullivan is standing by now. Mr. Sullivan, Doug Letto here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mr. Sullivan, it's Doug Letto. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can barely hear you, Doug.
Mr. Sullivan, losing by 3 votes, that's as close as it gets.
Doug was saying that losing by 3 votes is as close as it gets.
Yes, I guess it could get a little closer, Doug. We could lose by 1.
You spoke on stage about how you feel. You said your family is probably more disappointed than you are. What did you mean by that?
Oh, well, I guess the tears came to their eyes, and I guess they probably didn't to mine. No, they really got into this. I'm the type of individual that, no, I never get too high or too low, you know. I've been involved in a victory in the past, and I've never been the one to rejoice too greatly, and in defeat I've never got too low. I look forward. I'm a focused, goal-oriented person. Tomorrow's another day, and I go about working as hard as I can for what I believe in, and that's the type of individual I am.
Ms. Varge invited you and the people who worked for you and other people in the party to join her. She made several points there. She probably took 1 minute and 10 minutes and 20 seconds to do that. What did that mean to you?
Well, there's been no doubts, I guess, in my mind, and I hope nobody has any doubts about my intentions. When I made a decision back in January to contest the leadership of this party, I gave a commitment to be here for the long haul, and I'm totally committed to the party. I entered provincial politics back in 1992 in a by-election against a Clyde Wells government that was 80% in the polls. And I entered because the party wanted a candidate to run who they felt could win. I ran for the party, and since then I've run for the party, and I've also run because I wanted to be the candidate. So I've been a party-focused person all my life, and I'll continue to be. And I think the positive side of this convention has been, you know, the tremendous boost has been given to our party, and the help it will be to win back the government. And that's what I'm all about.
Okay,
I'm always disappointed that I wasn't the one who would lead them to that victory, because I feel I have a lot of positive things to offer. There's so many fundamental things in this province that I sincerely believe in, and I feel I could motivate the people and our caucus together to achieve that. And
okay, Mr. Sullivan, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've become a victim of the time that we've been allotted this afternoon. We've enjoyed having you with us for this Progressive Conservative Convention. Lynn Varge, the new leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Newfoundland and Labrador, winning over Loyola Sullivan this afternoon by 3 votes. I want to say a special thank you to our guest Charlie Power from the Sullivan camp, Kathy Dunderdale from the Lynn Varge camp, who probably would have preferred to be other places this afternoon, maybe twisting arms and stuff, but we've enjoyed having you.
We should congratulate Kathy as the co-chair of the Lynn Varge campaign. You did a great job, Kathy. Congratulations.
Thank you both very much. Here and now, 1 hour and a half from now, Glenn Tilley will be hosting that show. We'll have all kinds of coverage of this convention. Ann Budgell will have a live interview with Lynn Varge, the new leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.